guys, we're going to go ahead and get started. We are going to try to use microphones to help folks online to see what's going on. Sorry about my voice. Because Jenny and I are standing. Thank you for coming. This started as a discussion in our stewardship committee about how you can set your family up for success. And that's, sorry, this is empty. So, basically, we're just trying to, over the next 3 weeks, talk about some of the things to think about, just as a resource. We are not personal experts, but we also are going based upon personal experience. Pam next week is talking about funeral planning, columbarium, and then the last week, Martha Wickman, who is a legal assistant for Walter Hopp, who's an estate attorney. She is going to be talking about some of the legal things. It was very helpful to even talk to her for 5 minutes, like things like she's not thrilled about the online free wills you can do. And it was very helpful just to hear some real advice, because it doesn't always think about things we have to deal with. And I'm going to talk a little bit about financial gifts and how they've really made an impact at Trinity over the last 20 years. And that really, it's something to think about. If you are a regular contributor to Trinity now, it's a way to continue that legacy upon your death. So, take it away, Jen.
Thank you. So let's hope I get through this, because I'm going to talk about my parents and my kids today. So keep your fingers crossed.
It's a safe space.
It's a safe space. Well, it's for me. So, how many of you still have parents that are living? Okay, congratulations. Of those parents that are still living, how many of them have all of their end-of-life legal and medical documents together? Almost everyone. Good. What about you? Do you have a will? Have you done your estate planning? Does your family know what you want done with your remains at your funeral and after? How many of you, and I don't know, well, Tanner, you, how many of you with minors still living at home have made legal arrangements for your children should something happen to you? In the state of Colorado, if you do not have guardian legally appointed, the courts will appoint one for you. And this could be someone that your kids know, and it could be someone your children don't know at all. And in the state of Colorado, if you're 18 years old, you should have a will. Even if you have no assets at all, your will determines what should happen to your body should you die. If you decide to write your own, be sure to sign and date the legal document. Date, 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 date. Everything needs to be dated, correct? Okay. The legal side of this workshop is going to happen, as Melanie said, on March 2nd. So let's face it, nobody wants to think about their mortality. But how many of us have had medical scares? Cancer, respiratory issues, a heart attack or a stroke? Pastor Pam and Dave were just in a very bad car accident, and thank goodness they're still with us. But what if it would have gone the other way? We think we're invincible, and our time will not come until we're very old. The fact is that the average age of death in the United States is, are you ready? 77 years old. That's pretty close. Are you prepared? I recently had a good friend stay with me, and she was asking me what I was working on as I was preparing for today. And I explained to her, and she replied, oh, I have my kids listed. Having someone listed as a beneficiary is not what I'm going to be talking about today. It goes far, far beyond that. So several years ago, I began having serious conversations with my parents about their aging and end-of-life planning. They're in their 90s, still living at home and fiercely independent. Here they are. They're celebrating their 70th wedding anniversary, still active and still engaged. Do I look like them?
Yeah. Certain out there.
visited them in Florida several times a year, but each visit raised concerns for me. Their house was dirty despite having a house cleaner. Their ice dispenser had mold. Leftovers in the fridge had sort of a gray hue. And sweeping the kitchen floor often revealed a pile of pills. Their car had a long scrape down the passenger side. And even so, Mom wanted to know why I thought she was having difficulty driving. As Tom can attest, I grew up in a very strong patriarchal home. You did not question my father, ever. My mom did not take well to questioning either. And this made it very difficult to bring up any conversation with them about their current conditions or their future. When I bring up my concerns to them, they brush it off. "Oh, you're worrying too much, honey," they'd say. And my siblings and I struggled with what to say and how to say it. I'd come home from these visits and I'd tell Tom, my husband, if you don't know him, "I'm not doing this to our boys. I am not doing this." So determined to handle things differently, I did some research and took a couple of classes through the Boulder County Area Agency on Aging. You've probably seen their ads in the Daily Camera. I wanted to learn how to talk to my parents in a way that preserved their dignity while ensuring their safety. My sister had a different approach. She hired a cleaner, lawn service, and a driver. And while these things were necessary, they weren't my parents' ideas. She imposed changes rather than guiding them to make their own choices. So I developed a strategy. When my parents talked about their struggling with aging, or their friends struggling with aging, I'd ask, "So what do you think they should have done differently?" This helped them recognize signs that might mean it was time for a change for them. And I created a landmark list. Clear, objective signs that indicated a shift was needed. Things like falls, struggles preparing meals, declining vision. Dad was legally blind. Mom's sight was very poor. Hearing loss. Mom was hard of hearing despite wearing hearing aids, and if Dad's hearing worsened, communication would be impossible. Serious illness, a loss of either of them. Managing finances independently. Dressing and bathing without assistance. Incontinence. And driving ability, as we've already mentioned. On my next visit, I sat down with them and said, "You're doing well, especially for your age, but I'm noticing some changes. I think we should talk about signs that might mean it's time to adjust some things." Fortunately, they agreed. Having a predetermined, fact-based list made decisions easier and less emotional. And we decided we needed to be prepared to adjust living arrangements or support services they needed as their needs changed and evolved over time. So we had a good start for the future. So when you walked in, Melanie was passing out some things. My sister found the big book of everything. And Melanie has the QR code in the back. This is about a 50-page document. It's a free PDF that you can get online. So we didn't print it out for everybody.
You just scan that with your phone.
Yeah.
It'll take you to it. If that doesn't work, I can email you the link.
So my sister found the big book of everything, a comprehensive document for organizing historical, financial, legal, and medical information all in one packet. At first, Dad was willing to fill it out, but Mom wanted no part of it and did not want to talk about death. That was a big issue as we talked about end of life. For her, it took a heart attack and a hospital stay for her to realize its importance. When their mortgage was due, Dad had no idea how to pay and log in. My brother-in-law had to hack in to their account to keep them from defaulting. That experience finally convinced Mom to allow my sister to oversee their finances. So we gathered login details and password details for mortgage, utility, bank accounts, investments, everything. You'd be amazed how many things that there are. And we shared them on the Google Drive, and what we refer to as the G Drive, so that all of us in the family, all of my siblings and our spouses can go in and look. We have access to all of that information at any time. I've also heard of many cases where the husband, for instance, pays all the bills, and the wife doesn't have to bother with any of the financials, but then he dies, and she knows nothing. We also compile medical records, doctor contacts, medications, procedures, so that anyone taking them to appointments had the necessary information. And this list, this is mine, had a few surgeries, was especially helpful when you're filling out paperwork at a doctor's office. You know, every doctor's office you go to has you fill out your own paperwork because of HIPAA, and it's just a lengthy repetition of all of this information that you don't normally keep in your head. So my brother, who handled most of their medical appointments, was officially added to their medical records for HIPAA access. One challenge we faced was ensuring both parents had proper medical permissions. My dad always considered himself and Mom as one entity, but legally, through HIPAA regulations, they required separate consent. And since I had experience working in a clinic, I became their medical insurance go-to person, handling claims, questioning procedures, and ensuring everything was correct. Eventually, we tackled end of life. We created this folder on the G Drive that would store all of these important documents. We prearranged for their cremation services and paid for them. Scanned the contract and saved it digitally on the G Drive. All the legal documents that they need for end of life. A church member who we have on March 2nd, who's going to give us information. In their case, the church member was an estate attorney that helped finalize their wills. Attorneys keep up with current laws that change constantly and are familiar with the laws of that state. And POAs, power of attorney, are very important. When you die, money's needed right away. For instance, a funeral home will not deal with the body until they are paid or given a deposit, and it's a hefty sum, thousands of dollars. If you don't have access to your parents' funds, you get out your credit card and wait until the estate is settled to be paid back. We also created an emergency folder. This is Tom and mine. It's an envelope that lived on their refrigerator, and it has key medical details in case the EMTs come to their house. Has all the same information that's on their medical. They have a DNR. By the way, the DNR is a legal document that is prepared by a doctor and needs to be accessible at all times if you have a DNR. And my dad wanted every measure possible taken to save his life, but he didn't realize that when they came in and did these last ditch efforts, that every bone in his chest would be broken doing that. So, as I mentioned, these are Tom and mine, and they're a little yellow. We've had them up on the fridge for a while. Mateo touches them, our grandson touches them all the time. We went a little bit farther and we put our pet on here, and we have a place that we meet up. If something happens in the house and we can't be at the house, we know where to meet up. It's our neighbor's front door. This way the EMTs know that if somebody's missing, that we might be over at the neighbor's house. So for funeral planning, Dad took the lead. He chose his songs, Bible verses, and who would speak. I documented everything and sent it out to my siblings so there'd be no disputes later, and they all knew what their part was. My sister-in-law didn't want to get up and speak with his son-in-laws, so Dad gave her another part. And when Dad passed, last March, at 97 years old, we didn't have to guess about his wishes. It was all in place. No arguments, no stress, just honoring what he wanted. In contrast, when Tom's mom died, his siblings told Tom and I to plan the service because we were the only ones that went to church. We had no idea what she wanted, and neither did anybody else. So, a little note here. With Dad dying in March, it's okay.
Okay, I'm scared.
With Dad dying in March, it was right before Easter. And the pastor of their church said that we would need to wait to hold his funeral until after all the Easter celebrations were done. My mom was, she grew up where a funeral happened right away. But by waiting a few weeks, it gave everyone a chance to regain their composure, make flight and hotel reservations, plan for time off work, and when we all arrived, be calm for Dad's funeral. It turned out to be a better outcome for us. Even the closest siblings can clash over end-of-life decisions. Emotions run high, and everyone has their own opinions about how things should look and be done. Have everything written down, eliminating sore debates. When my sister wanted a different photo for Dad's funeral program, Mom simply said, Dad not picked this one. And when my sister-in-law objected to a non-hymn, I reminded her that's what Dad chose for his funeral. The only change we made was adding military honors, which deeply moved everyone. Mom approved this change after I explained to her what it was. Dad's military service was very important to him. Now, in January, I went to a funeral, my mom's best friend. She was a nurse. They had a very similar service for her, for nurses. And I understand that teachers, law enforcement officers, and firefighters also have the same honors. There may be more, those are the ones that I know about. A couple of other things that we did in this process, because Dad was a veteran, I discovered Patriot Angels. Do we have any veterans? Parents are veterans? Okay. Well, tell your friends. Okay. Okay. I discovered Patriot Angels, an organization that helped my sister file the necessary paperwork for Dad to receive financial living benefits, different than medical benefits. And while Patriot Angels charges a fee, the ultimate financial support Dad received was invaluable. Also, sorting through all the things that you have in your house, that you got passed down to you, that you want to pass down to everyone else. Sort of overwhelming. Thank you. So make a list of what those sentimental items are, where they came from, who should inherit them, and if there's a story about them. I have a library table that was my great-grandparents, and my mom's family would always go after their Christmas pageant at church and go to their grandparents' house and do their Christmas pageant. There were 7 kids. Do their Christmas pageant for their grandparents. And then there were silver dollars on top of the library table. Cool story. So take pictures of these items that you want to pass down to ensure clarity. What does that blue dish from Great Aunt Maud look like? Mom had a list. In the china cabinet, there were all these things that went to each one of us. And I said, well, Mom, where's that blue plate? Oh, it broke in bridge last night. So take a picture of what they're going to be looking for. Then communicate with your family. Your kids may not want or have room to house everything, so prioritize a few key items. Then plan for the rest. We arranged an estate sale for Mom and Dad, which was really relieved the rest of our family of the burden of handling it ourselves. And for Tom and I, what we want for our kids, what they don't want, is to be offered to other family members and then have a big bonfire with s'mores and everything else. The other thing that worked out really well for us too, it was a great tool for us. It's a free app you can get on your phone. It's called Turbo Scan. My sister lives in California. I live here. My brother's in Florida. With each of us doing work on our parents' behalf, we needed documentation. We all loaded Turbo Scan, which was helpful for digitizing important documents when a photo or a fax isn't sufficient. It actually takes a scan on your phone. So Tom and I have already put our plan in place. There's a letter in Tom's desk drawer with, sorry you guys, death's not easy. With instructions for our boys, including how to access the safe and locate all necessary documents. Our boys couldn't be any more the same. A lot of you know them. They couldn't be any more different. More than anything, we want them to mourn together, not argue over their idea of what Tom or I want and what to do with our belongings. Planning's the key. So, at my funeral, I want my best friend to take my phone and send everyone a black screen that says, oh my God, it's dark in here. Sir.
I was going to also add that we actually have money in the safe, cash in the safe, so that we actually have cash in the safe so that the boys don't need to worry about accessing cash if we die.
My parents.
Dave. Oh, sorry.
Thank you. Sorry. My parents did a decent job of getting ready for it. One of the things they did was to put me as a signature on their checking account. And then I became owner of the checking account when they both passed. That made things an order of magnitude easier financially. Because I could pay when I could get money into the checking account, which took a while. But I was able to then deal with, 15,000 here, 4,000 there, etc. And it was like, okay, it was a big change, and it's not tough to do.
Right.
It's something very easy.
I think that's one of the things that we had, just what Dave said. There are so many scams all around us. And the banks and the doctors and everybody that is joined in with all of this, they need to make sure that you are actually who you are saying that you are. So they're going to not just let you dump a bunch of money in somebody's account. You need to prove why you're putting money in that account. And if you don't have things in place, it's not going to happen, or quickly.
I would also just share, sorry my voice is so terrible, but when my dad died, I went with his wife at the time to the funeral home, and she was, when they needed to do anything. She was like, well, we have a life insurance policy, and they said, well, they would take like a lien on it, but then there's a fee for that. So don't think life insurance is your solution for having ready cash when that happens. It's definitely more than that.
One other helpful tip, make sure if you have automatic bill pay, that your survivors know the account numbers and have authority to change it. My brother's son passed away at a very young age and had a lot of automatic bill pay. Took him 9 months to get it with all the banks and all the companies would accept the fact that he had died. In the meantime, they kept taking money out of his account. He was no longer earning any money. And it was a nightmare for my brother to sort out.
There was a great AARP article about how you don't think about like who's gonna turn off the electricity, like who has authority to do that. And if it's just in your name and you're gone, they do not let you just turn that off, even if you pay the bill. So be aware.
My sister called me yesterday and she said I would be getting a package in 10 days to 2 weeks, and it would contain size 10 ice skates. And I said, why? And she said, well, they're yours from when you were a kid. I said, I don't want them. She said, that's why I'm bringing it up now. We found a place to donate them. This is a sensitive item with her because when she went to all of her children and said, these are the things we're going to leave for you, just like my kids, they all said the same thing. I don't want that crap. And so, you know, to talk your admonition, to talk to your family members in advance, find out if they'll even accept the stuff, or if it's time for the bonfire and the s'mores.
I have a question.
Yes.
How much money should you have available?
Okay, Mike, Peggy?
How much money?
It really depends on how much planning you've done ahead of time. So mom and dad had already worked with a crematorium and they'd paid for it. So when dad died,
You scooch into the screen
sorry,
so people can see you. Thank you.
so when dad died, where he was happened to come home from the hospital, went to rehab, that's where he died. The rehab called the crematorium. They came and picked him up right away and did their thing. We didn't have to have any money because mom and dad had taken care of it. Just as Melanie had said, okay, that was several years ago and in the Midwest, so prices are different here, $10,000.
Okay.
Your kids don't know about this stuff. They think they're even more invincible than what we think we are. And they don't have access to those kinds of funds. Having cash, that's why we decided to do cash and it's in a safe, is accessible right then. You don't have to go through the bank. Everything that they would need is supposedly right there.
Okay.
Austin's 37, Morgan's 33. They don't even know the code to the safe.
I was gonna ask you that.
It's in the letter. They know about the letter in Tom's drawer, but it's in that letter, how to get into the safe. So we have guns. I grew up in northern Minnesota. My dad was a hunter. Sucked Tom in with him to hunt. And so when the boys were little, we decided we needed a safe. And never told them what the code was, even today. But, long answer to your question, but yeah, quite a bit. And I think that perhaps on March 2nd, that you'll have a better idea that day.
Okay, I'm thinking 15 to 25,000.
Yeah.
I mean, my dad's funeral was more than 10, but they wouldn't even start till we gave them 10.
Yeah.
And it all depends if you're being buried and all that stuff
Right.
versus cremation.
Right.
So Pam will talk about that more, but just be aware, if you're being cremated, it's probably a little less, but that doesn't mean you don't need to cover a mortgage, an electric bill, a water bill, getting all those auto deductions stopped.
Well, and we bought flowers for the funeral. We had dad wanted a reception afterwards, and so we bought all the food. You have to pay the pastor, you have to pay the custodian, you have to pay the AV person, you have to pay the organist.
Question, how do you get your name on their utility bills? Does that, like my mom would have to do that, right? Because I got my name on her checking account and that was a nightmare. Because she, I don't know, thought I was gonna take all her. But,
Well, it takes their power away.
right. And finally, the people at the bank who know me and they were able to talk to her about this was really important. So, but I haven't done the utility stuff.
Yeah, a power of attorney for her, if she's willing to do that. And if she's done her estate planning, that should have been part of that process. But a power of attorney will help you. Say
It
again.
doesn't fix everything.
No,
Okay.
it's a help, it's an aid. Mom thought she was doing just fine, but when we had to hack into their account, then we hacked into a few other things too, just to look and make sure that everything was the way that it should be. And we found some little glitches along the way. And so my sister started out by saying, why don't I just mirror you? Why don't I just make sure that all the bills do get paid, you guys have stuff going on, you might forget to pay this or that or something else. Make sure your social security checks are coming in the way they should be, that there's no issues there, those types of things. A little bit of a white Catholic lie, but that was our way of feeling much better about their financial side. And then my sister learned from this whole process and asked my mom, what about this? And then mom began to realize she was missing things. Then totally relinquished to my sister, which was an excellent thing to have happen.
I was just gonna share too, my dad, when he died, designated about 4 major things for me to take. And I'll be honest, I was not interested in almost any of them. But out of duty, I took them, and the last one left my house a year or 2 ago. My dad died 14 years ago. So don't feel bad if somebody gave you something, because that's what you're supposed to get, and it's not your thing, and you move it on to somebody else who might really enjoy it. It was a set of golf clubs. I don't golf, but my dad did, and he loved it. So don't feel bad about that too. So I would also just say, my dad also was a big collector. He collected Civil War memorabilia, and he was a pastor, lots of books, and nobody wanted them. And so just the more you can spend the last third of your life getting rid of things, that is some of the best gift you can give your children, is just thin your life out. As much as you love that crystal vase, I'm not sure your kids are gonna love it.
Or your grandkids.
Or your grandkids.
No matter who it came from.
And a bit of wisdom Melanie has, if you want to remember something, taking a picture of it and then letting the physical object go, but then you at least have an image to go back to that can help you have that sense of like memory that you can hang on to it without the physical thing.
I did have a question, Jen, I forgot to ask. My sibling and I are not exactly getting along right now, and it's the 2 of us. So how do you handle that when you have a shared Google Drive and they don't like something? Do they go in and modify it? How did you set the rule? Because everyone has like editor status, I'm guessing. So I hate to say that bluntly, but like, is there any ways you guys, are you guys just came together as siblings and were able to say, we're gonna follow their wishes no matter if we like it or not?
We did, because it wasn't about us. It was about mom and dad. It's about what they wanted. All of us have editing capabilities, but very few of us have edited somebody else's document because it's documentation. It's not something that I wrote that's my opinion. In some cases, my sister-in-law didn't like the way the medical sheet was written up. It didn't work for her. She's the one who, with my brother, because they live there, take my mom and dad to all of their medical visits. So do it the way it works for you. Make sure all the information's there, but do it the way it works for you. My sister does their financials. My brother takes them on all of their visits that they have to have. I do their medical insurance, and we stay in our lane. My sister and I are not too dissimilar because we both have extremely strong personalities. No comment from the peanut gallery. And things needed to be a specific way for her. And there were a couple times when she needed to say to me, stay in your lane, and I had to do the same to her. And we finally figured out that was the best way to proceed. It's not about me. But the only way you can do that is to create all the documents on the G drive and not give your sister editing permission.
Just so, I wanted to see what was up, so.
Yeah.
Anything else? Anybody have a success story, sharing of how things are going?
We tried to get the Boulder County Area Agency on Aging to come in and actually do what I'm doing because I learned almost all of this from them. No one replied to my emails or my phone calls. So you got me.
And you did a fine
And,
job.
thank you. But
I would also say Greg Dieter is online, and he is watching, and he said, spend time to clean out your house. Leaving the house for the family to clean out is very hard work.
Yes.
Lots of guilt and frustration and rental of dumpsters. And he's speaking both from his parents, and I'm sure even somewhat from Chris. Yes.
when my parents moved into, so a couple years ago, I think I missed this as I was going through, but a couple years ago, one of the times that I went to visit mom and dad, I said, I think you guys are doing really well, but I don't think you're doing as well as what you think you are. So I think that you need to really consider when it's time for you to move into assisted living. And we had already gone and looked. They live about an hour north of Tampa, and in the specific area where they are, there were really only 2 facilities that my siblings and I considered for them. And pretty much told them that that was all, that they could choose one or the other. Mom wanted one, dad wanted the other. Of course, like, let's flip a quarter, you guys. But with dad being legally blind, he knew his surroundings. When they moved to assisted living, the amount of mental space that took for him was, what do you think, debilitating in a way, Tom? Yeah. Everything was brand new for him. So, in hindsight, you can now get long-term care with your insurance. It's expensive.
Yeah, really.
Assisted living is pretty darn expensive. So in my mind, they're about the same. So in mom and dad's case, would it have been better for them to stay in their home and we bring in all the services that they needed? Dad's now gone. Mom spends majority of her time, she's what, 94? Majority of her time in her room, watching ball games on TV. She doesn't want to go talk with everybody else because all they talk about is all their ailments and dying. She still doesn't want to talk about dying. So she stays in her room. If she were still in her house, I'm not sure she would be without dad, but if she were still in her home, her neighbors would still be there and come in and visit her. So, I don't know what's best. But I do know that every one of us are of the age that we have to really, really think about this.
I would just say the folks online are both Gail Gray and Greg Dieter, both emphasizing clean out your stuff. That's their number one thing they're both emphasizing, watching, is that's the best gift you can give your family. My mom recently downsized to a 2-bedroom, 2-bath condo. And I've told her over and over and over how much I appreciate that, because I could pack up her life in a day. And when she came from a house, and she got rid of all that like weird Fenton glass collections and stuff like that. So now it's what she really uses. And I mean, that's such a gift to me. She's also 78, you know, so and she actually almost was the victim of a scam last week. So she's starting to have some of those things we have to pay attention to. So you realize how much that stuff is just such a gift for your kids, because they're trying to funeral, finances, medical stuff is a whole nother level.
I had a question or comment from Mike.
We were very fortunate in our family. 3 years ago, my grandma was 102. And we talked about this for a long time, you know, going on the next generation and that kind of thing. She had a lot of memorabilia stuff from her grandparents, you know, going on through a bedroom set that she bought with her money by milking cows, you know, those type of things. But she had labeled all of that, and then there's a story with all of that to go with it. And so we were very fortunate. The downside to it is, she lived in that home 72 years. It never looked cluttered. My Lord Almighty. Junk that is there. We are on our 4th year now. We've had 3 junk johns. We've donated loads and loads of stuff. We've got the upstairs cleaned up. We're ready to move to downstairs.
Wow.
And where the problem comes in now is with the siblings. I've got 4 siblings. You know, my dad is still alive. You know, their son. Everybody's got kind of what they want going in through there. But we are opposite ends of the spectrum when it comes to, my brother is a hoarder. He's just like my dad and my grandpa. They are hoarders. We've finally gotten him to the point to where, well, take a picture of it before you throw it away. He wanted to touch it one more time, type of thing. And I've got sisters in the middle and me, I'm ready for the match. And so Mom has started all this, my folks are in their 80s, and what she started to do, she's downloading, offloading stuff. Here's what do you want? What would you like? Going on through it. My dad is still collecting crap. You know, but it's just the nature of the beast. But Mom is at least trying to get some of that stuff going.
Yay, Mom.
Yeah,
Yay, Mom.
exactly.
My mom went from her home to an apartment to assisted living. And so during that time, she didn't want to sell the house because she might go back, right? So when she died, we had the task of cleaning out her house. My mother had all her yearbooks. She had all the cards that came with the baby gifts from, you know, when Nancy and I were born. She had her wedding dress, and Nancy and I, you know, we would, you know, Nancy thought it would take, you know, a week or 2. Well, it took us a month of me being out there, and every day, you know, we spent 10 hours in
Hit
the
it
house
hard.
and just keep going. We called every, you know, Lutheran, Catholic, whatever agency we could. I saw some truck go up the street and start picking up stuff. I ran up and said, will you take these, you know, paintings? Will you take this? You know, people say, oh yeah, we come, but by the time they got to us, you know, they were too full to take the 2nd and 3rd bookcases and, you know, all that kind of stuff. So it was quite a journey of just trying to get rid of everything. And we did fill 2 roll-offs as well, so.
We were lucky because Mom and Dad lived in a community in Florida that there were a lot of old people. And in fact, I would probably be one of the younger ones that was living there if I were there. And so people were starting to move to assisted living or passing away. And so they had, the rumor mill had gone rampant, and it was a company that does estate sales for you called Miss Bricks Picks. And they'll come into your house, like you take,
Could you use the microphone, please?
oh,
She's on. She's on.
Oh, she's
Okay.
on, okay, I'm sorry.
Miss Bricks Picks, and that's just one that's local there, but they come in and they go through everything and then they display it and have an estate sale, and they take a percentage, but they do it all for you. In Mom and Dad's case, when they moved to assisted living, the assisted living facility had a mover. They suggested that you use that. I had things kind of cordoned off. These are going, don't touch these. And they packed up everything and moved it and unpacked it, which I was there by myself, so that was awesome.
Yeah.
We went through Mom's closet. She sat in her walker. I said, we're gonna go through, you tell me yes or no, you're taking it, you're not taking it. I pulled something out of the closet, yes, no, and I dropped it on the floor, and her eyes were just like, because there was her garment on the floor. There were a couple of things I'd pull out, I'd hold up, and she'd go, I'm like, you took too long. She still had quite a few things that she took, so that wasn't, she wasn't missing out on anything. But some of those, and then we were able to laugh about it later. So some of those things you just kind of have to do some of those things, but we got their house pretty well, ready for the movers to come. Dad went in the garage. Dad's always been a handyman. He grew up on a farm. He knew how to do everything. I grew up northern Minnesota, 200 miles north of Minneapolis. If you called a repair person, you were lucky if they got there 10 days later. So we did everything ourselves. Dad's always used to doing everything himself. So I'm like, okay, so why don't you go get the things that you want out of, that you'll think you're gonna need, you know, maybe take a screwdriver and a little hammer and stuff. He had a toilet plunger, he had some paint. I'm like, Dad, the maintenance guys will come up and fix your toilet for you. You don't need to take this. And so we put it back, and the next morning I went out, it was back on the table to go. So some of those things you kind of have to watch with them. We had them move all these things over, and I was bound and determined before I came back home, everything was going to be put away, all the pictures were going to be hung up, it was going to be done. I was still staying at their house that whole week. Every day I took boxes of stuff back that was going to go in the estate sale, because they had taken way too much stuff. But I didn't tell them what they were doing. They made that decision for themselves.
I was just gonna mention, Jean Brueggemann, when he passed away, they did an estate sale at their house. So if you ask Priscilla, I don't know who they used, but that was a local one here in Longmont, and I think they took 40%, so just to give you an idea what it is. But they came in, took pictures, they made an online sale, they promoted it kind of everywhere, and then at the end results, they handled all the payments. They had a very narrow window when you came and got the item, and then the girls got the rest, the girls and the son got the rest. So just, that's a look, I don't know who they use, but that's someone to talk to.
I just wanted to say I've helped lots of people downsize. You don't want to look at my house, but I'm really good at other people's homes, but medicine, and I'm really big on recycling, or instead of just dumping. My son's favorite thing to say, I'll just get a dumpster, and you know, when I kick. But I think it's really important to know and have a list of places where you can take things to recycle.
Great idea. You
and-
guys, go ahead. I'm
And
sorry.
I have some lists of places, but there's still a lot more, you know, for mattresses and clothing and hangers. I mean, all that kind of stuff, because I hate just dumping it.
Mhm.
Um,
Do you guys know in Boulder County where you can take your meds that you're not using? Or Boulder County Sheriff?
What was
Boulder County Sheriff or Hospital ER.
some
pharmacies also have the medicine.
So I've always taken mine to the sheriff's station that's over off of, just east of 55th. And you walk in the door and there's a metal container. It looks like a post box.
Yep.
Just- You don't have to interact with anybody. Yeah.
Same thing.
Same with Walgreens, in Longmont.
Walgreens as well. I just was gonna share, Gail Gray just shared, It's Just Stuff
Yeah.
is the local place that will do an estate sale, I think is what it sounds like. She just said that, called It's Just Stuff.
And don't forget, when they come in, this is a business for them.
Yep.
They do it all the time. They do it really well. That's why they're still in business.
Yep.
So get out of their way.
Okay.
Dad thought that he should be making all this money from this.
Yeah.
They had all this stuff that nobody wanted. They made a couple $1,000s, but Dad thought it should have been $10,000 or $15,000.
Melanie. I also worked at a couple consignment stores, and kids and don't want any of that stuff that auntie left them or grandma left them, or when you go on vacation and you buy something, no one wants it. So it is very valuable information of what, get rid of it before it ends up that way, because it'll end up in a landfill.
Well, and I'm fortunate, I have some cousins who want all that historical furniture, southwestern Iowa. They want all that, okay, my mom and dad downsized. They had great-grandparents on the other side, dining room table and chairs. My cousin, who lives in southwest Iowa, and her partner drove a pickup to Florida, picked up the table and chairs. It was pouring down rain, so they stuffed it in the back seat and drove home. Mom had offered that table and chairs to me, and I'm like, Mom, I don't have a place to put it. I have a dining room table. I don't have a place for it. Have that be the first thing in your estate sale. So there are people in your family that want those little mementos. Offer it to them. But then, no,
Tell you the truth.
nobody wants your junk.
You want me to.
Greg just said that the state companies on his comment really do work very hard for that 40%, do not underestimate. Well, that sounds like a lot. Think how many things you have when you're taking a picture and listing and managing and payment and all that.
When Dick and Nancy, so Dave's mom and dad, moved from their house to assisted living, actually Nancy moved. Ashley, our youngest daughter, and I spent a better part of a week going through the house because they, on where they lived, they actually have an estate company that does it, all that stuff. So then came the time of furniture. What do you do with, you know, your great-grandparents or great-great-grandparents' furniture? And when the kids came down for Dick's funeral, we went through the house and the kids chose what they wanted. And then I rented a U-Haul and drove to Ohio, Illinois, and Colorado, dropping off stuff.
Bless you.
But it was easy, the rental was cheap. I spent two nights with the kids, which was always fun. And then one night in Iowa by myself at a hotel. But they got the things they wanted, and then everything else went. And it wasn't, I didn't feel like we guilted the kids into anything. It was like, I have room for this, I have room for this, I want it.
And it was mostly stuff that, and most of the stuff was either, okay, colors, but most of the furniture was my grandmother's or her great aunt, so it had some age to it. That's what a lot of it ended up being. And the kids said, oh, I have a spot for that, I have a spot for that, I have a spot for that.
What you made me think of there is when Tom's mom passed away, Tom was in Turkey when his mom passed away and got a phone call in the middle of the night from his sister. Hi, how are you? He goes, well, I was asleep. I'm in Turkey, it's the middle of the night. Well, mom passed away. So he got home. All the kids went to mom's house then in Philadelphia to clean out the house, take what they wanted. They had arranged for, I'm glad he went in the bathroom, he's not hearing me say this, arranged for them to all be there one weekend, and one of his sisters went the weekend before and took what she wanted and left. And at that time, Tom's in the development industry, and the economy for us has always been like this. This happened to be a time when we didn't have 2 nickels to rub together. Tom flew there by himself, went through the house with them, and only brought a minimum amount home compared to what he wanted to bring, because we couldn't afford it. So that's the other piece with your kids, is thank you for doing that for them, to make that happen for them.
Greg just shared online that if you do this now and not near the end, you can do a little bit more with an auction house, particularly if you have valuable items where you may actually get more than you would at an estate sale at the very end. It's hard because you have to part with things early, but if you're really trying to get that value to your kids, it's something to think about.
One more thing I thought of, before you have other people come in the home, I would suggest going through all the clothing, all the purses, all the pockets. For people, I have found money everywhere, or I had another friend said, they hid money somewhere, can you find it? And so then it was a game, and it was on a top shelf in a can. I mean, all that kind of stuff before companies come in and help you. That's a big one.
Yeah.
I also know friends who've had parents with dementia, and as they start deteriorating, they start leaving money, and so that he felt like he had to go through the bills from 1945 because there could be $100 mixed in there. So just the more you can do it now, the better.
When we were putting Dad's obituary together, and this is when they still lived in their home before they had moved to assisted living, part of the big book of everything asks you to write up all those things. Make a list of all the important things in your life, so that helps you. That's your guideline, your outline for your obituary. He goes, oh, I already have mine done. And I'm like, well, where is it? It's in the filing cabinet over there. There were four drawer filing cabinets.
Oh my gosh.
They were full. And I'm like, well, Dad, I need to dig out a copy and make a copy and put it in with this stuff, so we're not looking through all of that. They know where it is. You don't have any idea.
Even when they tell you where it is and show you where it is, you'll never remember where it is.
Yeah.
Yeah, even when they show you where it is, you'll never remember where it is when the time comes. Other than I might get lucky and get the right file cabinet.
Or they've moved it.
Or they moved it. It's like, yeah, that was one of the issues with my dad when he passed, is trying to find the documents.
My parents thought that I had the same knowledge they did.
I would also say, Terry Holkemeyer wasn't able to be here, but she mentioned the idea that they have something called a Knox box next of kin. The idea is it's the box where you should find everything. It's like your letter in your drawer that goes to the safe. It's a box that has all this stuff that your kids might need quickly, easily available to them, and they know where at least that is. My mom has this silver box under the bed. I know that's the important place.
Yeah.
So anything like that you can set up.
And that's part of what this big book of everything is. Don't do this all at once. Don't think that you can get through this all at once. This is a long time. Like, if you like a glass of wine, just open the bottle. But this will take you a long time to go through. One of the fun things, I just thought about this, one of the fun things when Dad and I were putting his book together, he told me all about his time in the service and little stories. He was in China. He brought fabric home from China that my grandmother made my mom's wedding dress from.
Aww.
Pretty cool.
Yeah.
My mother was about this big around, or I might have considered wearing her dress. But, you know, just really cool things, and how he loved ice cream. And one of the waiters in the place where they used to eat a lot figured that out, and they somehow figured out how to make ice cream in China and brought him ice cream one night. That was one of the stories that he told. So it was really a lot of fun to hear some of those things.
I would say record those as well.
Yes.
When my grandpa was nearing the end, I just stuck my phone out and just started like a recording, and just started asking him questions to capture some of those stories, because then you also have their voice.
Right. So we didn't dwell on this very much, but as I was leafing through here to get that big book, I'll leave this out. It is a HIPAA invasion. I've taken my meds out, but I carry this thing with me. I've got it in a column form, and it's folded up in my wallet. It's cut down. It's condensed. I'm constantly referring to this. I don't have to remember a doctor's phone number. I don't have to remember what year I had what procedure done. When did I have my tonsils out? When did I have my gallbladder removed? Some of those types of things. I did one of these for Mom and Dad. Dad was up helping Tom one time in one of our rental projects, and Tom said to him, "Don't get on the ladder." Well, Dad's Scottish and German, so of course no one's telling him what to do. So he got on the ladder, fell and got hurt pretty bad. Took him to the ER. "Dad, where's your list?" "Oh, it's at home." Well, because I put it together, I had the list. We were fortunate. But at the same time, they get their meds from CVS. And CVS here was closed, but CVS in California was open. So the hospital was able to call the CVS and get his meds. Had he had this on him,
I have taken a friend to the doctor, and she has a list like that. And she's getting to the point that she can't always remember things, and it's very helpful, because I'm like, "Jeannie, where's your list?" And she pulls it out, and that's when we're able to share and answer the doctor's questions about medications and stuff.
when I worked in the clinic, we had so many new patients come in. It took them half an hour, 45 minutes, an hour to fill out all the paperwork. This was many years ago. And so this was something that I realized that we needed to do for ourselves to help us out when we go do the same situation.
I ran across that list 5 or 6 times with my parents.
Which one was accurate?
You gotta date the dumb thing.
Date.
And then if you find one that's 3 years old, and that's the youngest, you can suspect that maybe the drugs aren't quite right, but it'll be close. And you need to check with the pharmacy or doctor.
Well, if you're not signed up with that doctor, that's a HIPAA violation, they won't tell you.
But will they tell the hospital?
They should tell the hospital.
That's
Maybe.
Depending upon the doctor's office.
And they don't even say how well they know you. Like, is it your hometown? They're like, "Oh yeah, that's Peggy, we know her, okay, give her the info."
It's
Versus,
actually a HIPAA violation.
Which it is.
it is, but my point is, if your parents are in Florida, retired, and you don't live there, they're not gonna give you anything.
Unless you think these medical people are just being cavalier, HIPAA violations cost them in the millions.
Yep.
So they're just not gonna break the rules for you.
Yep.
HIPAA was put in place for a reason.
It was.
Any other-
Thanks, you guys.
Thank you.
I encourage you to come back next Sunday because Pastor Pam and Dan Twetton
Yeah.
are going to be talking about cremations, funerals, our columbarium that is here. And will you be talking then, or is that March?
That's last time.
Okay, so, and then March 2nd, we have the estate planning attorney, and Melanie's also going to talk about how you can include Trinity in your estate planning. And we've talked about this. I think two things had happened. I would come home from mom and dad's. She knew I had been there, and she's like, "How was your trip?" Oh, geez. And that in combination with, we've gotten some really nice donations to the church. In some cases, that's kind of kept our doors open for a little while. And not something that had even crossed my radar until Melanie said something about that, that when you die, you can include, just like you're giving all your money to your kids, give a little bit to Trinity too. But that happens on March 2nd, more information on that. So come back. And I think that every few years we'll try to do this again for the people that missed out today.
Yeah.
So I didn't realize how important it was until I needed to use it.
So what we did is we're live streaming it on YouTube. So it's not gonna be something you can find in our YouTube channel, because we're gonna make it something called unlisted, which means if you have the link, you can get to it. So we can send you this at any time, but that way it's just our personal sharing. It's not out to the public, but it's also available if you wanna send this to your brother, sister, and you're thinking, oh, they need to see this, or your kid, or whatever. So I will share that link in the next few emails. And then if you need it and you ever can't find it, let me know.
Good deal. Thanks,
Thank you,
guys.
Jenny, very much.
Thank you,